So good afternoon, everyone. This is Samad here from WeBind Education Technologies, Mumbai. WeBind brings industry experts live into your classrooms. And to help you understand better what exactly we do, I'm going to play a short video.
Rohan and Rita are engineering students. They are studious and smart. They work hard and get good grades. It's a happy story. But here comes the villain. They're confused about their future. They find no connect with the subjects they study and what career they want to pursue. Professor Nandlal is a very senior lecturer. He has sensed this issue with many other students like Rohan and Rita. He is worried too. He sets out on a mission to find a solution. He does some research, tries to find out who can help him bring the real corporate world into the classroom. He wants someone to help students gain knowledge and experience of the practical world. And voila, what does he find? WeBind, bringing industry to classroom. WeBind has a list of industry experts as masters on their platform. By means of WeBinders, these masters interact with students like you. These WeBinders are called masterclass. What do we expect from a masterclass? Stories of inspiration and experience, tons of information on new products and the ideas behind it, useful insights on how to step into the industry, chance to interact and pitch ideas to the movers and shakers of the industry. One such masterclass is waiting for you. Come, let's hear the master. And yes, don't forget to like us on Facebook or tweet to us at WeBind. We appreciate your feedback by just a WhatsApp on 088 791 63528. We promise to bring the Tatas and Bansals and the Murtis to you soon. Help us get them live on your screens.
So the topic for today is cloud computing and its application. So cloud computing is just not another subject for you, but it's a whole new booming industry. And we have Mr. Vishal Sharma as a speaker for today. Mr. Vishal speaks from an experience of more than 12 years, having worked with companies like Xerox, Sapient, and NIIT Technologies. And currently he heads the application service department for BluePi. So without any further delay, I invite Mr. Vishal to take over. Mr. Vishal, we have got Amal Jyoti College from Kerala. So Amal Jyoti College, can you please wave your hand? Thank you. We have got lovely professional university. We have got Vizag Institute of Technology. We have got Anjuman College from Nagpur, Xavier Institute of Technology from Mumbai, and T.P. Sanghvi College from Mumbai. I request all the colleges to please keep your systems on mute while Mr. Vishal is speaking. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thanks everyone. So it is a great pleasure actually to talk with a upcoming student who are actually looking to start their journey to the IT career. So as I think you have already got my feedback, like background of myself, like I'm having somewhere around about 12 years of experience where I work with companies like Sapient, NIIT Technologies, Xerox. So presently I'm working with a BluePi from last 3 years, and BluePi is a company which we say that who is actually born and brought up in cloud itself. So we are actually a AWS partner on the cloud. We are also a IBM software partner. So we do all different kinds of stuff on the cloud computing. So I think before putting further delay on this thing, I can actually share my presentation, and then I can actually start speaking about it. Just give me 2 minutes. Okay, I hope that you people are able to see my screen. So
Yes, we can clearly see it. If you can please zoom it up.
okay, sure.
Thanks.
Okay, so so two things when we are talking about a cloud computing, what cloud service actually offers us, how we can implement it, and what are the different career scopes is basically agenda of this particular presentation. So I hope that you people know a little bit about cloud, or I can actually, okay, so I can actually start with a very basic thing. So cloud is something like when we are actually talking about a virtualization of the systems, where we are saying that your single hard disk is actually going to be shared by multiple operating systems. So it is more like a virtualization on the top of hard disk, which can automatically handle the multiple OS and cater the requirement. So if I take an example of any cloud provider, whether you're talking about AWS, whether you're talking about Google, it's basically a virtualization on the top of physical machines. So that's what the cloud is, correct? Now, the simple words, like what are the basic benefits when I'm actually talking about cloud? Why companies are actually looking to move into a cloud rather than creating their own data centers, creating their own infrastructure? So the basic premises of moving into a cloud is one, it's very cheap. Cheap in terms of if I'm going to calculate the ROI, return on investment, in long term, for example 5 years, whatever cost I'm actually going to put into a cloud will be cheaper than if I'm going to create my own data center. This is one aspect, but I don't think so that is a very major aspect, but yes, it is there. The second most important and most critical advantage which actually provided by a cloud is called scalability, or I can say elasticity. Now, this scalability, when we are talking about, if I'm running an app which is handling a multiple users, correct, and simultaneously you will see that the load of that app is automatically got increased. At that time, if I'm actually running in my own data center, I have to put my own boxes, and if the traffic is low, that box is useless, it's waste, correct? Same way, if I'm working on a cloud and if I'm putting that app on the cloud, and if the load is very heavy, I can automatically scale horizontally. So there are two types of scaling. One is horizontal scaling, one is vertical scaling. Vertical scaling is more like when I'm actually putting more hardware to the existing physical box. That is more like a vertical scaling. Now, horizontal scaling is where I'm actually putting a small boxes parallelly, which can actually cater the requirement. So normally when we are talking about a cloud, it is more like a horizontal scale up, where I can actually throw up and create the multiple instance at the same time, and once my load is down, I can actually reduce back. So it is called flexibility, where I can actually pump up my environment anytime. I can reduce my environment at any time. So that is the basic, I can say the biggest advantage which we have normally in a cloud. Okay, let's move on. So what cloud computing? So normally when we are saying that, so as I told you that we are a partner of AWS as well as IBM software, we are actually running somewhere around 50 plus projects on AWS. We are working with AWS from last more than 3 years, and we are like a certified solutions provider uh, on our AWS platform. Now, what are the different competencies when we are talking about these cloud providers, whether we are talking about Amazon, AWS, or IBM? So they actually provide the competency like big data, content platform, real-time systems, low latency web applications. Same almost applicable for IBM, but in IBM you will have Bluemix, which is more like a PaaS, platform as a service. So basically in cloud, we can actually divide the things into uh, three major things. One, in three, I can say service model. One is software as a service, another one is platform as a service, or the infrastructure as a service. Now, software as a service is a very lucrative model for current companies. The reason is that any company which owns the product can actually put their product on a cloud and provide that as a software as a service. So you don't need to, if I put in a simple example, if you take an example of Excel, you need to install Excel on your machine. But in case of, if I'm going for a Office 365 kind of cloud solution, or I can say software as a service, there I don't need to install a Excel in my system. I can actually use a Excel like a service. I don't need to install anything on my system. Now, when we are talking about a platform as a service, it is more like where I'm actually giving a platform where the developer can actually develop the things, deploy the things, and use it. So a very good example for this is Windows Azure, which is work like a platform as a service. So you can actually have a combination of hybrid cloud also in that. So in cloud, we can have two different, I can say, topology. One where I can actually put all my applications, everything on the cloud, like AWS. So it is more like everything is in the cloud, and I'm using that through my network. The another model is that some of the pieces are deployed in my data center, and some of the services I'm using from the cloud provider, for example, AWS or IBM or a Google, correct? It's called a hybrid model where some of the systems will work independently in my data center, and for some of the services, it is going to call the cloud provider. So Azure platform is the best fit for that, where you can actually install Azure in your in-house data center and can actually communicate with Windows Azure on the cloud also in the backend. Now, infrastructure as a service is more like where I'm actually using a cloud for just providing an infrastructure, or in infrastructure, I can say like providing my storage area, providing my memory, providing my databases, not in fact databases, more like virtual machines. So AWS is a very good example of infrastructure as a service, where you can actually have like you can spin up your EC2 like clicking just one mouse button, correct? Same way you can actually increase your storage, you can decrease your storage. So those kinds of things you can actually use like a infrastructure as a service. These are different service model provided by the cloud. Now, cloud, as I already talked about, that where we have various deployment models also, where I can purely use a cloud, public cloud like a AWS, where I can just deploy my application and I can just use it. Or I can actually create my private cloud too. Now, private cloud is more like uh, like in US, AWS has provided a private cloud for the US Army. The dedicated servers, the dedicated virtual machines, which can only be accessible by their specific, I can say, IPs and subnet mask. Nobody else can actually access it. It is more like a private cloud. Now, hybrid, I think I already discussed about it, is that where you have some of the pieces in your data center and some of the pieces are in the cloud itself. It is more like a hybrid approach. And we can also have a community cloud also, where the community can actually create their own clouds. Okay, so these are the various examples which I already discussed about, that software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, where for example, software as a service, maybe you people heard about it, Salesforce CRM is best fitted for that, or Lotus Light, where they are just providing a software as a service. Now, platform as a service, the good competitor for platform as a service is Windows Azure or Google App. Now, infrastructure as a service can have like Amazon rack space, where you can actually uh, take the storage capacity, defining the computer resources. So all these different models are there. Now, moving to a natural evolution of the web. So basically, if I take an example of old days, uh, there normally companies create their website, deploy it on their infrastructure, and then people actually use it. But nowadays, if I'm talking about SaaS model, there I don't need to define my website. I can actually define my product, deploy it on the cloud, and that product um, will serve to a specific customer. So I don't need to think about defining the licensing and rest of the pieces. Now, same way I can actually define my development platform like a PaaS or infrastructure storage, where I can actually use the different resources of a computer. Now, I hope that you people know about the virtual machines. So as in the starting itself, I told about that cloud is nothing. It is just a virtualization on the physical boxes. So the important thing here is that the virtual machine, so in a simple word, virtual machine allow multiple virtual machines to run on a single physical machine. That's what the virtual machine is. Now, the virtual machine can have a various kinds of like virtual machines provided by various kinds of I can say types. The like one is like Zen provide the virtual machine. VMware also provide their own virtual machine. UML, Dell, etc. Correct. So now actually we talk about the storage part. Now storage part is very important in terms of cloud, because if I take an example of AWS, AWS have a physical setup of a system. It is bigger than a regular football size, and on the top of that they have done the virtualization. So you can understand that what space we are actually talking about. So you can actually store all your data remotely, and you can actually use the caching also, which is already provided by your cloud providers. Then you can actually spin up your elastic cloud computing. So it's a specific Amazon terms, which is normally called a EC2 system. So EC2, S3, these are the terms which is used in AWS cloud things. Okay, now what is S3? So I can say that S3 is in a simple term, is a more like a bucket. So if you need a water, you take a bucket, you fill the water, and how much space you need, accordingly you will pick up your bucket. Same way, AWS provide the S3 buckets, where you can actually store your uh, data, specifically data related to websites. If I take an example of website, data like images, data like JavaScript files, those things can be easily be storable on the S3 buckets. Now, the best part about S3 buckets are that if you are putting anything on the S3, and if something goes wrong, you will have another copy of that, and nothing will be get lost. That is a benefit. Now, whenever we are talking about the pricing, obviously nobody can actually compare the cloud pricing with the actual creating their own data center. So it's more like just 0.20 per gigabyte you have to pay to transfer the data, and 0.15 per GB month for the storage use. And it's like nothing. So if you are using 1 TB of data, 1 terabyte of storage with 40,000 downloads in 24 hours, you are just paying $200. That's it. The second important thing is these are the various use cases you can actually have a look where S3 is best fitted for, like content storage, which I already discussed about that. You can actually put your media files, you can put your JavaScripts, rest of the things in your S3. Or you can also put the data for analysis part, where you can actually put your financial data for computing and pricing. So basically that data where you have a bulk of data, that you can actually put in the S3. Now, the best part about S3 is that if I take an example of banks, or if I take an example of any other company, there you have a requirement that after a certain period of time, the data get moved to archive and the actual DBs remain as it is. So in terms of AWS, we have terminology called Glacier. Now this Glacier basically is used to move the data from S3 to Glacier is more like a archiving. So it's cheaper than S3, and but to retrieve out a data, you have their SLAs are somewhere around 24 hours. So if you put a request and get the data back, you have to wait for 24 hours. That's why it is cheap. Then you can actually defining the backup. So you can actually define your application backups in S3. You can define your disaster recovery also in through the S3 media. And this is the second most important piece of things called EC2. Now this is Elastic Compute Cloud, which is more like creating a virtual machine where you can actually create a virtual machine and then install various applications, various softwares on the top of that. So you feel like this is a physical box, but it is actually a virtual box. Now this is actually powered by Zen Zen, and you can actually use various different types of operating systems like Linux, Windows, Solaris, correct? And you can manage through console or through APIs also. So that is very much possible. Now, if I talk about the challenges, what we normally have, the use to cloud provide a number of opportunities basically. It's very simple that you can actually enable the services without any understanding of their infrastructure. So basically, what it basically means is that you don't need to understand what type of infrastructure is going below your EC2. You just need to create a EC2 and rest of the infrastructure will automatically available. You don't need to worry about it. Same way you can actually, so obviously cloud is always economical if you compare with your own data center kind of thing. So those are the various benefits which you can actually get from a cloud itself. Okay, in terms of how it will change the job. So if I take an example of tracks like project manager, application development, people, IT management, IT maintenance, correct? So the skill requirement is very high in normal terminologies. Like for project manager, skill requirement is quite high. But does cloud impact on their role? Marginally anything. Same for application developer and IT management, yes, it will impact to their role. And the major role which is actually hit by a cloud is IT maintenance and operations. So people who manages the infrastructure is majorly hit by a job by the cloud, because if they are not ready to understand the cloud and defining their infrastructure on the cloud, how to define the infrastructure on the cloud, then it is very much possible that they will be outdated very soon. So these are the various impacts roles which is going to be hit by the cloud. Now, in terms of job opportunities, these are some numbers. These are numbers which define that how much worth of industry is this. It is somewhere around 12.5 billion by 2015, growing from the current 6 billion. The estimated means that workforce will increase to about 250,000 from the current 1 lakh. So this means RMI industry will add 40,000 jobs every year. In addition to this, Indian operation and other IT IMS sector in India will generate 10,000 jobs. So job opportunities, if I talk about in terms of a cloud, is unlimited, because all companies are actually running for a cloud. They cannot afford to have their own data center, putting big IBM servers or putting the VMware in systems inside that, because it is very very heavy on the cost as well as very heavy on the maintenance. It's something, and every machine have a end time or end support. After that, they will not get a support from the company itself. So now the major strategy for all the big companies except BFSI domain, BFSI domain are more the companies who deal in bank, finance, investment bankings, correct? Except that most of the companies are actually looking and moving towards the cloud. Even BFSI domain is also looking for a cloud, but the IRDA guidelines is very clear that any cloud provider which are having a data center or having a physical presence in India, they can only use that. So some of the cloud provider are already there in India. I think AWS is coming up with their own data center this year. Microsoft has already been launched. So now even the big companies are also thinking about moving towards the cloud side. I think that's it in a nutshell. I can actually explain you. So open for question. Hello?
Yes, so can we start with the question, sir?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. To start with, can we have questions from Amal Jyoti College, Kerala? Is there any questions from your side? Is there a professor or representative from Amal Jyoti?
Hello, is it audible?
Yes, it is audible.
Sir, how can we do our projects using cloud computing?
Sorry, can you repeat?
How can we do our projects using cloud computing?
So, okay, so doing a project, so, okay, which language you normally is familiar with? C Sharp, Java, .NET, what?
C and Java.
C and Java, okay, good. So, see, in terms of developing a project is not going to be changed. You have to develop a project using a Java language or a .NET or a PHP or a Node.js, correct? But deployment of that project, if I take an example of website, deployment of that website will change. Now, I don't need to deploy that on my own system. What I can actually use is cloud as an infrastructure where I can actually do the deployment on the cloud and people can actually use it. So scalability, elasticity, and all those stuffs will automatically managed by the cloud provider. You don't need to worry about it. So in a nutshell, development, there will be no impact, but yes, deployment will change.
So I hope that answers the question. So moving on to Anjuman College from Nagpur, is there any questions from your side? Professor Sufyan from Anjuman College. Any questions from LPU, Lovely Professional University?
Is there any question?
And besides, if there is any question from other colleges like DJ Sangvi or Xavier's, they can use the chat box which is available, or they can just ping me so that I will unmute your college. Professor Naveen or Ms. Jaya from Xavier's, is there any questions from your college? Okay.
Hello, we don't have any questions from our end. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Vishal, I think the students haven't prepared their questions as of now. However, students, if you have got any questions related to cloud computing, you can always email it to us and we will share it with Mr. Vishal. Is that fine, sir?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you very much for joining in, Mr. Vishal. We appreciate sharing your knowledge and experience with the students. Can we have a round of applause for Mr. Vishal here? So the representative for all the colleges, please note that some of the colleges are yet to give their registrations. So we request the professor in charge to complete the registration. Also, there will be certificates which will be given out. The students can contact their professor in charge for the certificate by Mr. Vishal Sharma. And thank you very much for joining in. Also, this session was brought to you by Tabs Academy, which is giving you 50% off on its services in Mumbai. So the Mumbai colleges are welcome to walk in at Tabs Academy and avail this offer. Thank you very much for joining in. Have a nice day.